What's up, everybody? Wanted to get on here and touch base just because I'm absolutely fed up. The CPF rankings and everything came out, and I got a lot of bones to pick. Um, and the main one that really made me want to make this video was everybody talking about Alabama. Alabama should not be in. Let's make that clear. They lost 3 games. There is no argument to be made that Alabama should be in the college football playoff. And the only argument that people are going to make is, well, strength of schedule. What strength of schedule? Who did they play? And I know I'm going to get into it. So before y'all go, well, they played Georgia, we're going to get into it. As far as Alabama goes, point number one, okay? Their AD comes out, sounds like a moron. Well, we don't need to schedule any tough out-of-conference games anymore if the strength of schedule isn't going to come into play. Who did you schedule out of conference? I'm going to give it to you guys. Here's their out-of-conference schedule. Western Kentucky, are they good? No. South Florida, are they any good? No. How about Wisconsin? No. Who else do we got on here? Oh, Mercer, powerhouse. No. That's all their out-of-conference games, all of them. Western Kentucky, South Florida, Wisconsin, and Mercer. You're going to downgrade your out-of-conference schedule from that? Who's worse that you could play out of conference? Wisconsin's the only one that's even competitive, and they're barely competitive in the Big Ten. They're not a good football team. But you're going to find somebody worse than Mercer? I mean, come on, this is ridiculous. Second off, another huge point here. Everybody wants to talk about, well, it's their SEC schedule. Their SEC schedule. They had the toughest schedule because the SEC. Their 17th ranked schedule is bullshit. And it's all biased based on the fact that the SEC used to be tough and Alabama used to be good. It's all biased. They did not have the 17th ranked toughest schedule in college football. That's absolute nonsense. And let's go through it here. The SEC. Who's good in the SEC? This isn't the SEC of 2010 with the Tim Tebow Gators and the Ingram and Saban Alabama teams and the Jake Fromm Georgia teams and and LSU was competitive. That's not what this SEC is. This is not a good SEC anymore. In case you guys haven't figured out, times have changed. NIL is a thing. The transfer portal is a thing. Conference realignment is a thing. And with that being said, the SEC is no longer this shining class above the rest of college football. They used to be. It used to be the toughest conference in college football. They used to have 4 or 5 teams every year that were national title contenders. It isn't that way anymore. Wake up. Get into reality. The SEC is just another conference now. Look at their record against other conferences. Look at their out-of-conference record combined as a conference, win-loss the last 2 years. It's horrible. It's sub 500. They don't just dog walk everybody else from other conferences. That doesn't happen. And let's look at this. Let's look how good the SEC is. Texas, 11-2, Georgia, 11-2. Both overrated, both with flaws, neither dominant. But they're good teams. Then we go to Tennessee, 10-2. Once again, team with flaws, but they're a good team. Alabama, 9-3, not good, just kind of average. Ole Miss, 9-3, average. South Carolina, 9-3, average. Missouri, 9-3, average. And then we get into it. Texas A&M, 8-4. Are they any good? No. LSU, 8-4. Are they any good? No, they're bad. Florida, 7-5. They're terrible. Who else we got to play? Arkansas, 6-6. They're terrible. Vandy, they're barely even a college football team. Oklahoma, 6-6. They're terrible in the SEC. Auburn, 5-7. They're horrible. Kentucky, 4-8. They any good? No. Mississippi State, 2-10. They any good? No. So where is all this toughness in the SEC? Oh, they had such a tough schedule. A tough schedule? What? They had to play a 7-5 Florida team, 6-6 Arkansas, 6-6 Vandy, 6-6 Oklahoma, 5-7 Auburn, 4-8 Kentucky, 2-10, Mississippi State, an 8-4 A&M team. Who are you playing that's tough? Who? Oh, Georgia. Okay, let's talk about Georgia. Because, and here we go. Everybody wants to complain about Notre Dame's schedule. Notre Dame doesn't play anybody. They're not even in a conference, and they don't play anybody. Notre Dame's soft cupcake schedule. How did they get in? Okay, let's talk about it. Notre Dame beat Georgia Tech by 50 points in Georgia Tech. They beat them on the road by almost 50. Georgia Tech then 2 weeks later took Georgia to 8 overtimes. How good is Georgia? Georgia almost lost early in the year to what turned out to be a 4-8 Kentucky team. Georgia struggled with Kentucky. They struggled with Georgia Tech. And they lost in a close game to Alabama. Who cares? They stumbled early to Alabama. Who cares? Alabama beat them. Okay, just because Georgia's 11-2, is that really a great win? Is Georgia really that impressive? It's not like they went to a conference title and knocked off an undefeated Oregon team or something. No, they didn't. They beat a Georgia team who we know has flaws that somehow is just a bad matchup for Texas. Texas just can't figure out how to beat Georgia. For some reason, I don't know if it's a physicality thing. I don't know what it is. It's a bad matchup. I mean, is Georgia really that impressive just because they're 11-2? Georgia's a good football team. They should be 11-2 as a good football team against the horrific SEC. The SEC is not good anymore. LSU is bad. Texas A&M is bad. Florida's bad. Arkansas is bad. Vandy's bad. Oklahoma's bad. Auburn's bad. Kentucky's bad. Mississippi State is bad. I don't know how many times we have to make this clear. There's 3 teams in the SEC that are above average. Tennessee, Georgia, and Texas. That's it. And if you're in the SEC, those are the only tough games on your schedule. Everybody else in the SEC is average to below average to bad to horrific. And like I said, Texas, not a dominant football team. Good football team, not dominant. Georgia, good football team, clearly not dominant. Had to go to 8 overtimes with Georgia Tech, and I'm a Notre Dame fan. Notre Dame's not that good this year. Notre Dame's an above average football team. Not a dominant, not a great football, an above average football team. Notre Dame, who's an above average football team with a bad offense, beat them by 50. Let's wake up here. The SEC, if we want to sit there and really take the math here, that means that Notre Dame is 50 points better than Georgia. If we want to take the math, that means Notre Dame would beat Georgia by 40 or 50 points. If we want to think about it hypothetically. Do I think that would happen? No. But the whole point is we're talking about, the closest thing you can look at is head-to-head matchups. And head-to-head, Georgia went to 8 overtimes and Notre Dame blew them out. So is Georgia really that good? And then they struggled early on with a 4-8 Kentucky team. They lost to a 9-3 Alabama, who we know is not very good. What are we talking about here? And then on top of that, Alabama, you lose to a 6-6 Vanderbilt as a 35-point favorite? You lose to a what is Oklahoma? 6-6 Oklahoma team? And you don't lose. You get blown out 24-3 or whatever it was. I mean, this is horrible. Those are unforgivable losses. Just those alone, unforgivable. And then you barely scum by against a 5-7 Auburn team to end the season. I mean, come on. What are we talking about here? Alabama has no right to get in, and I'm tired of the talk about the SEC is the best conference in college football, and it's so tough, and the in-conference schedule is so tough. No, it's not. It used to be. It's not anymore. The SEC is not that SEC anymore. Tim Tebow ain't coming back to Florida anytime soon. Stafford, Fromm, Stinson, all those, Jalen Carter, all those guys from Georgia, they ain't coming back anytime soon. Jayden Daniels ain't going back to LSU. This is not the same SEC. They're not. Brian Kelly's still the coach in LSU. They're not good. The SEC is just another conference. These teams are bad. And the two best teams in the SEC, well, we'll say three best, because I think Tennessee's better than Georgia. 10-2, 11-2, 11-2. They're not dominant. They're good football teams. They're not dominant. And, well, they're not dominant because of the schedule. Like you said, schedule's not tough. Oh, God forbid you had to play a bunch of sub-500 teams. Half your games are against sub-500 teams or 500 teams. Come on, that ain't no tough fucking schedule. The only team that's dominant in college football this year is Oregon. They are dominant. They blow out everybody. They didn't struggle and have cakewalks against nobodies. They're dominant. Second part of this, and this is where I don't think Alabama should be in. But if you want to make the argument for Alabama, here's where it comes into play. And this is why the argument happens. Is because this whole setup for the college football playoff is asinine. It's moronic how they set it up. Oh, the Power 4 conference champs are going to automatically get buys and this and that based on their record. The conference championships are stupid. It's irrelevant to me. That's a consolation prize for you not being able to win a national title. Like being the SEC champs or something like Georgia, and then you get knocked out first round in the playoffs. Well, you got a consolation prize. You were the SEC champs. That's stupid. The whole point of having this 12-team playoff was supposed to be the arguments from back in the day. Undefeated Boise State, undefeated TCU. Should they get in? Can they play with the big boys? That was the whole point of this, was to give those smaller schools who were undefeated against and had ranked opponent wins an opportunity to prove they were as good as their record against the big boys, which at the time was the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Ohio States of the world. That was their opportunity to prove it. That's what this 12-team playoff was supposed to be. There's no more conversation about, oh, well, Boise State's undefeated, and how come they didn't get in, and a 2-loss Alabama team gets in over them in the national title. That was what this was supposed to be, was eliminate all that crap. It wasn't supposed to be, oh, well, who do we think is the 12 best teams in the country? That's not what this was supposed to be. Because this is what happens, is you're going to have arguments all day about, well, this team played this team, and this team played that team, and blah, 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 and that means that they're better than them, and, well, if they're better than them, then they have to be better than them. Well, then how do we put this team in if that team beat this team? But then we can't put them over there because they beat them head-to-head. But it becomes that you can't dictate who's the best teams in the country. There is no way to dictate who the best teams in the country are. There's a line of common sense where you say teams like Army that have played no ranked opponents all year, they basically barely play Division I football, and then they play one team in Notre Dame and they lose by 50. That's the line of common sense that says, okay, despite their record, Army doesn't have the schedule to get in. They don't have the record. They don't have the resume to get in. That's the line of common sense. Anything under that, when you start talking about Boise States, SMUs, these other schools, that's what the 12 team is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the 12 best records. And everybody, well, it's strength of schedule. I don't care. It's the 12 best records. Because you can't start to go down the road past the line of common sense, like I said with Army. Once you go past that line and you start looking at Power 4 or Power 5 schools and try, well, this one's better than this one. They got 3 losses, but they're better than them. And do we think Alabama could probably beat SMU? So maybe we should put them in with 3 losses. Then what the fuck is SMU playing for? Why would SMU play? What are they supposed to do? They lost 1 game. What are they supposed to? So what? Then we're back to the same shit we were with 2 teams, with 4 teams, is undefeated teams don't get in because of, well, we think this 3-loss team's better than them or this 2-loss team. That's not what this was supposed to be. It's supposed to eliminate those problems. And the only way to eliminate those problems is you win, you're in. You don't, you don't. You know why the NFL doesn't have these problems? Because it's all based on the record. It's all, well, we think this team, it's not, oh, well, we think that this team's better than this team, and this and that, and this conference is better than that conference. No, you win, you're in. Same with the NCAA basketball tournament. You win, you're in. You can't sit there and pretend like, oh, well, we know that a 3-loss team over here is better than a 3-loss team over there. And it should be the 12 best teams, the 12 best records, because the only way we can judge who the 12 best teams are definitively without getting into all these second, third level conversations of who beat who and where and what was their opponent and try to dictate what we think the strength of their schedule is and all this nonsense is they're 11-1, they're in. They're 12-0, they're in. We got 3 teams with 1 loss, they're in. 2 teams with 2 losses, they're in. And then we'll pick maybe a 3-loss team if we had to out of a conference champion or something. That's the only way to do it. The 12 best records get in. And then they all 12 of those teams have an opportunity to prove on the field in real time whether they're as good as their record is, it shows or not. That's what it is. That's what it's supposed to be. That's how you make the games relevant. Because everybody talked about, well, with the 12 teams, maybe the games aren't going to be as relevant anymore. Yeah, they will be. If you put in the 12 best records, every game matters. Because if you got 2 losses, there might be 10 one-loss teams in the country and you might be screwed. All the games will matter. And that's what it's supposed to be, is not us making the decisions of who's better and who's not better and who gets in over somebody else. No, it was always supposed to be the 12 best teams get a chance to prove that they're the 12 best teams, and the best team out of those 12 will come out as the national champion. That was the way it was supposed to be. That's the only way to do it. This structure they have now with the conference champions and this and that, like, which a lot of people have said, and I agree with, 3-loss Clemson teams in the playoffs? How? Why? And this is where Alabama comes in talking about 3 losses. Is why are we not in? Because Alabama does have a better strength of schedule than Clemson. Clemson's strength of schedule is terrible, and they lost 3 games. And they lost 3 games against 3 bad teams. What are we talking about here? Clemson has no right to be in. Oh, well, they're the ACC champs. I don't care. The ACC's bad. I don't care if they're the ACC champs. They're a 3-loss football team. And this is what I said when they implemented this whole system of the Power Fours get buys and the conference champions automatically get in. That's stupid and it's nonsense. Because at the end of the day, this is what happens is what I said was in theory. So what? In theory, we get a 5-loss Power 5 conference champion. They're not one of the 12 best teams in the country. Oh, well, they're a conference champ, though. Who cares? We want to talk about the 12 best. Like I said, the only way to get the closest that you can with no of this up and down bullshit is the 12 best records. That's the closest you can get without teams feeling like they get screwed. But on the other side is we're going to put these conference champions in just to put conference champions in. That's stupid. And even the guys in the SEC have already said this. You have to just put in, rank them like we've always ranked them. Where you're ranked in the country, 1 through 12. And let the buys fall where they may. The top 4 teams in the country get a bye. Regardless of conference, regardless of record, the top 4 countries, top 4 teams get a bye based on where you're ranked. Because just like, once again, and everybody talks, well, Notre Dame's not in a conference and this. Yeah, and they get screwed for it. Notre Dame's the 3rd ranked team in the country right now. They're number 3. They're 11-1. They're number 3 in the country. They're seeded number 7 in the playoff because they're not in the conference. The 4 conference championships get the byes. Notre Dame has to automatically play an extra. Notre Dame can be undefeated. Doesn't matter. They automatically have to play an extra game every year versus everybody else in the country because they're not in a conference. That's bullshit. They get screwed. They get absolutely screwed by not being in a conference. This is stupid. The teams with the bye should be Oregon, Notre Dame, Georgia, and there you go. Whoever else you want to pick, ASU, Boise State, I don't care. But those are the best records. Those should be the buys. This whole nonsense about these teams and they get all this stuff because they're conference champions is stupid. Because like I said, when you put it all on paper, the Lord of the conferences, all of y'all, the SEC, do any of them deserve a bye for winning the SEC? Half the conference is sub 500. You didn't earn a bye winning that conference. You went through a cakewalk. Just because we recognize it, ooh, LSU, oh, Auburn. We recognize the names. That doesn't make them good. Cam Newton's not at Auburn anymore. Auburn's not a good football team. They haven't been in a long time. Brian Kelly's at LSU. Joe Burrow ain't coming back. LSU's not a good football team anymore, and they haven't been in about 3 or 4 years. Tim Tebow ain't coming back to Florida. They're not a good football team, and they haven't been for about 8, 9, 10 years since he left. The SEC is not what we're pretending that they are. The transfer portal, the conference realignment, the NIL deals, they've balanced out college football. There's talent everywhere now, and they've balanced it out. It's not the same SEC. Alabama has no claim to get in. And at the end of the day, the whole alignment and structure of this playoff system is stupid, and it needs to get reorganized. All right, guys, that's my soapbox. Make sure you share, like, and subscribe so you get more content like this when it's coming out. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Till next time, peace out.